Let's get into regions to avoid. Now, I'm just going to start with this very simply. Any new estate, and people are going to hate me for this, but I'm telling you this right now, do not touch any of these new estates. And you can name, there's a number of other ones you can name, but when I talk about new estates, I'm talking about your exurb, your non-infill estates, and mind you, your infill estates themselves are not affordable in these price brackets anyway. Like very few. A good example of a recent infill estate that's been bought was a park in Haberfield. They all went for like $3 million, so they're not even affected by this anyway. But don't buy any new estate. So I'm going to list some areas that I mean around there that I don't want you to touch. So let's start with Melbourne. I don't want you to touch Truganina, Tarneit, Craigieburn, Roxburgh Park, Officer, Point Cook, Werribee, South Moraine, Mernda. And there's plenty of others you can probably mention that are out towards Cranbourne, north of Melbourne. Kilmore's a good example of another one. Anyone out towards Melton, they're all crap. Don't touch any of them. And fundamentally, people won't like me saying it, but the reason being is because supply and demand, as I've said to everyone, it's your biggest promoter of capital growth, but it's also your biggest enemy of capital growth. Now, the reason it can be your biggest promoter is because if you've got, consistently low stock and consistently high demand from the right income demographic, prices have to go up long term. There's no doubt about it. But the reason it can be your biggest enemy is because if you've got an area that has, a lot of stock on market and a lot of potential of future stock on market and a low income demographic trying to buy it, there's not much price pressure long term. And sure, these areas will probably all go up in the short term, don't get me wrong, but long term you don't want to hold them. I'll give you a good example. So a lot of people in Melbourne like buying in Tarneit, right? Now I say to them, look, don't get me wrong, there might be a good supply and demand ratio at the moment, or demand to supply ratio, but how long have these estates been in? Most people say, 5-10 years or something like that. Most of them are even less than that, to be straight with you. But anyway, and I'm like, okay, cool. So who's buying there? Oh yeah, first home buyers and all investors. So I'm like, right, what's their LVR? Oh yeah, 80 to 90% and above. And I'm like, okay, what's nearby? Oh yeah, there's Coles Express here, there's a school here, and then I'm like, okay, cool. And I'll then ask them, okay, so if I were to go 2K west of that, what is it? Oh, farmland. I'm like, okay, so let's say your ratio at the moment, demand to supply is 100 buyers, 1 house for sale. Your ratio is 100 to 1, very good. What happens when the farm at 2K down the road gets bought by a developer or rezoned and they put a 400 lot subdivision up? What happens to your supply and demand? Oh, well, it goes out the door. I'm like, oh yeah, well, how much land is there? Oh, there's acres and acres of it right out to the South Australian border. So I'm like, oh, do you really want to buy there when the supply and demand ratio really looks like that in the future? And they'll say, oh no. And it's crazy about how many people actually fall for this shit because it just doesn't work long term. It does not work long term. Don't do it. It's an absolute trap. I mean, come on, people. Let's be better at doing this anyway. So that's fundamentally the reason. That's 80% of your price growth anyway. So avoid that. Now, I'll get on all these other areas that I like buying regardless. Sydney, Schofields, Northwest Corridor, that's Melonbar, Box Hill, that whole area. Austral / Southwest, Oran Park, out towards Grasmere, all those sorts of surrounding estates. Don't touch them. They are rubbish. Just don't buy them. Glenmore Park West, Glenmore Park's just south of Penrith. Plenty more land about to be subdivided and developed out there as well. Brisbane, Murrayfield, Caboolture, Burpengary surrounds. That's kind of inland Moreton Bay area. Don't buy there. They are all new estates. They're all first home buyers, people with not a lot of money. Greenbank, Ripley as well in the south. That's sort of south west of Brisbane. Don't buy there. They're just rubbish areas to buy. Most people buying there are getting a kickback from the developer or someone like that as well. Narangba, funny enough, is some parts of it are an older estate, but there is new estates very close by. Don't buy there either. Newcastle, Central Coast, Illawarra. In Newcastle, avoid Boolaroo, Cameron Park. Both of those areas are pretty awful, really, for capital growth because there's more estates going out there quite a lot, especially around Boolaroo. Central Coast, Woongarra, Wallara, that's kind of west of Lake Haven. There's not much you can actually build in the Central Coast, but that's one area that does have quite a bit of available land to be built on. Illawarra, Wongawilli, Tullambar. So if you go out sort of towards Robertson from Albion Park, there's not much land to build there either. but that area does have some land, and there's plenty of new estates going there, plenty of farmland being rezoned as well. So that area is going to have a lot more stock. Geelong, Grovedale, Lara, Charlemont, Armstrong Creek, Mount Dunedin, Lara, all of these areas, new estates, so much land to be built. Flat land as well, very easy to build on. I haven't added this here, but I'll add it for people in the west as well. If you're in Perth, Eglinton, Old Chemos, don't buy there. In the south, I wouldn't be buying Baldivis either. There's plenty of others I wouldn't buy too, but just think of it like new estates and all that kind of crap. Don't buy there. They'll go up, but just longer term, they just don't work. So that's my first thing to buy. Don't touch a new estate. Please don't touch a new estate. I beg you, you're making a mistake. I can tell you that right now. It'll look good for 3 to 5 years. It'll look rubbish for 50. So the other 45 of the 50, should I say. So don't buy there. Second thing, all apartments. Do not buy apartments. I cannot tell you how many people I know, and these are even smart people that buy apartments. I've spoken to people on $400,000 a year who wonder why their apartment hasn't grown in value. And again, I'll say it again, supply and demand's your biggest promoter and enemy. Now, apartments, the issue with an apartment is generally when you buy an apartment, you have quite a bit of you could have a good demand to supply ratio again, but wherever apartments are, the land around it is also generally zoned for apartments. And not only that, but you can also get a rezoning even where an apartment is, where they add stories onto the apartment block, and that even kills your supply and demand as well. So if you get a developer who buys it or buys a couple of houses in a row, you just basically cooked your entire, literally, I kid you not, your entire ability, right, to therefore, have good supply and demand in the long term. Now, to give you an example, I spoke to someone lives in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, and he told me years ago, it was like 2015 or 2014 or something, his, buyer's agent, and I'm not going to name the agency because I don't want to get sued, but it was one of the major ones, told me to buy an apartment in, I think it was Caulfield North or something like that. Now, Caulfield North and Caulfield is a very good suburb to buy in, mind you. It is a very good suburb. And the way they trap people in this is they say, we only want to buy around a certain ring of the CBD, which is good. I actually like that. But we only want to buy certain dwellings, and it might be an older estate where they're not building anymore. And they're fine. That makes sense. But the issue is, people that generally buy apartments are not wealthy people. I do not know many wealthy people, unless it's a penthouse literally on North Bondi or one overlooking, I kid you not, literally Elwood Beach or something like that. No one wants to live in apartments who has, most people who want to have an aspirational future or have a lot of money don't want to live in apartments. They want to live in houses. So the demographic that buys them is just rubbish. Wealthy families that hold on to properties as well don't live in apartments; they live in houses. So that's another reason. And they're just not something that's held on long term. They're not something that wealthy people buy. They can build more even in existing estates. Good example in Sydney, Woollahra. That's a council region that is known for being very, I'd say, anti-development, extremely. Even in a state like that, the state government comes around literally only like a week or so ago and says Woollahra Station will be opened up and there's going to be higher density limits. Now, all the people who bought units in Double Bay, in surrounding parts of even some parts of Bellevue Hill, close to where Woollahra Station will be, will now have the issue of more apartments being built and the capital growth will be worse. So these idiots, I don't care about that, even if they try to bring people on with, we only buy within a ring, which is good. Don't buy apartments. Like, come on, people. Like, we're better than this. They just don't work. They are rubbish for capital growth. Buy houses, honestly. Now, I understand it if you only have like sub 450 grand or sub 500 grand, you can't afford anything else and you need to live somewhere. I 100% get that. But if you have anything over $600,000, don't buy an apartment, because you can buy a house that will perform perfectly well and you don't have to fall for that bullshit that people tell you. Don't buy apartments. Finally, and this will probably surprise some people, don't either buy townhouses. Now, the reason being, again, this is the thing. So there's not the right demand from the right income demographic. People that buy townhouses, they buy them because yes, families do buy them, but the issue is they generally buy them to then upgrade into a house. I used to work, this is years ago, for a company where the head office was in Brisbane. It was in Cannon Hill, to give everyone an idea. And one of the other GMs of one of the companies that I knew very well, I was talking to her, and they just bought a townhouse, had 3 kids, her and her husband. Husband ran a cafe. She was a GM of a company. And I said, oh, yeah, cool. What are you looking to do that for? And she goes, oh, yeah, we can't afford a house, but we need to live here because my kids, but we're only doing it to upgrade. And pretty much there was another 4 people who were high income earners, and they all said the same thing. They all said, we're getting in the townhouse just to get in the market. Then we're going to try to get in the house after it, right? And for their reasons, they had to live there because of a family and they couldn't afford a house. So I understand that. But if you are someone without a family who doesn't have to live somewhere specifically and you can afford a house, don't buy a townhouse. Again, as I said, they're an upgrader asset. They're not a long-term buy and hold asset. Generally, the people who are buying a first home buyers, like the example I gave you, and people that can't afford to upgrade or just don't have higher income demographic, you're attracting the wrong demographic. And secondly, they could become oversupplied as well. They'll become oversupplied as well. So here's an example. This is off the Victorian website, and you can see I've just screenshotted it so people can fact check me on. Automatic approvals from townhouses. We're opening doors using deemed to comply design standards. Fast approvals for plans that meet updated design standards for good development. Now, I think this is actually a good thing for supply and demand, mind you, don't get me wrong. But if you're thinking long term about prices and what's going to happen here, don't buy townhouses. Again, they're going to be supplied quite significantly, in some areas significantly oversupplied. So it's not going to help you with good capital growth because of these reasons. So don't buy townhouses. I'll say it again, do not buy townhouses. They will not work long term as well as a house. Yes, you pay more tax for a house, but you make more money. So that's your trade-off. That's the reason you don't want to buy townhouses. Don't buy them. Final point. Non-major regional locations. So, for example, Bendigo, Ballarat. You can add Shepparton, you can add Warrnambool, you can add all those areas, right? You get these buyers agents, you get these property experts, that you meet at a fucking barbecue, or you meet, down at a coffee shop, or some idiot real estate agent who doesn't own anything, or someone like that. I know I'm on YouTube, but the 99.9% of them that do that shit, they'll tell you, oh yeah, Bendigo and Ballarat are good. All right, let's just bring reality to it. So here on the top right, you'll see regional centres are in New South Wales. It includes those areas. Now, it doesn't say Central Coast there, but the reason being for that is because Central Coast is considered a part of Sydney in real estate. If you can look at the Aussie Home Loans 25-year report if you don't believe me. It included Glenning Valley. It included literally Lisarow. Those are all Central Coast stuff. It includes right up to Doylston and Norah Head, which is the boundary of Lake Macquarie. But then number 2, it says in Victoria-Geelong. So that's the regional centre. So Victoria, capital C and regional centre, 800k up to 950. Other, so that's all your other Bendigo, Ballarat locations, 650 hasn't moved to 650. So even the government knows that these areas aren't really areas that are going to really go above that. So they put the brackets that are kind of there. Now, Melbourne, the reason it hasn't been updated for Melbourne is because people in Melbourne can afford to go above 950 anyway, but in Geelong, not that many. People can, but not as many as in Melbourne. The vast majority of people who live in Melbourne can afford that anyway. But they put it in Geelong because they know it's developing and they know it's good. The prices are going to go up significantly, and they want to be able to affect that whole market. Whereas Bendigo, Ballarat, they know it's not going to go much above that anyway. So that's the reason they're doing that. So for those idiots that like buying in these little regional towns that there's no fundamental major industry there, don't fall for that shit. You can even fact check me on the government website of what they've just done with a 5% deposit scheme. This shows you right there. So that's all of the things that as I said, for people definitely to avoid. Don't buy new estates at all. Don't buy apartments at all. Don't buy townhouses at all. And don't buy non-major regional locations. And you can see those that are listed literally on the government websites if you really want to. That's what I'm saying. Please follow that, people. Don't fall for the bullcrap of what is said everywhere on the news and from idiots who don't know what they're talking about as well.